Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. Ali was a very quiet for a boy entering his teenage years. Part of his quiet state was due to the fact that he was smaller in size and stature than all of the other boys his age. In fact, he was almost the same size as a girl of the same age. He had no male friends, even from school. The other part of it was due to his being an only child living in a very strict house, where his father ruled with an iron hand. What he said was the law. Even his mother lived under the strict rule of the father. When she emerged from their room each morning to begin the day, she always wore a shapeless, ankle-length black dress and a satin headscarf. The only parts that were visible to others, especially men, were her hands and her face. This was in keeping with the community's teachings and her husband's wishes. Beneath this shapeless dress, though, she still managed to indulge her femininity by always wearing soft, silky lingerie. Only her husband, though, saw her dressed in these things, and that was in the privacy of their room. She even hid these items from her son's eyes by doing the laundry and putting it away at night while he slept. One summer's day, Ali's parents were at work while he was home alone. Usually, he had a specific list of tasks to perform or a book that his father expected him to read. This day, however, Ali had no specific tasks or assignments. He wandered around the house looking for something to do when he saw the clean, folded laundry sitting in laundry basket in the kitchen. His mother had brought it up from downstairs last night but had been distracted and had not put the clean clothes away immediately. This morning, his mother had arisen later than normal and did not have the extra time required to put the laundry away. She figured one time would not, in any way, corrupt her son. As Ali glanced at the basket, some colorful pieces of fabric caught his attention. His curiosity drew him to the basket to see what these colorful items were. He reached in and first touched a pair of his mother's red, lacy, satin panties. He felt the sensation of touching the satin as it sent electricity through his body. He had never experienced anything like this before. Quickly, he withdrew his hand from the panties and tried to move away. Surely, a piece of cloth could not have provided that degree of excitement that he had just experienced. Just to prove it was a coincidence, Ali had to touch the panties one more time. Again the pleasurable sensations of the satin against his bare hand surged through him. Ali was overwhelmed and picked up the panties to look at them. Underneath, he found a matching red satin bra, a full slip and suspender belt, along with a pair of his mother's stockings. Gathering these items up into his arms, he quickly ran to his room. Anything that felt this good merely by touching it had to be tried on, and Ali was ready to try on his mother's items. He shut the door, even though there was no one else in the house. He stood there for a second and tried to convince himself that this was wrong. However, the touch of the satin overwhelmed any other thoughts he had. Undressing quickly, he stood in his room, looking at the unknown and forbidden items on his bed. Ali first put the bra on over his chest. It took him a few minutes to figure out how to wear it and then somewhat longer to fasten it securely behind his back. The bra cups hung limply over his chest. He was both excited and disappointed with the bra in place. Excited because he was wearing something soft and silky, which obviously was forbidden to him. Disappointed because the cups of the bra were empty and just hung limply against his chest. Next, he guessed that the suspender belt should be put on around his waist. This was easier to do than putting on the bra. Still, the feel of both satin garments excited him. Ali then stepped into the satin panties and quickly snugged them into place. He noticed a slight stirring in his inner thighs that he had never experienced before. By this time, he was eager to experience the stockings on his legs. He adjusted the toe and heel to fit properly before slowly pulling them up. The sensation of the fabric against his bare skin was delightful. He struggled briefly with fastening the suspenders to the lace trim but felt a sense of satisfaction when he succeeded. Relishing the snug fit of the suspenders, he quickly put on the other stocking and attached the suspenders with ease. Finally, he slid into a red satin slip, shuddering as the silky material glided against him. Ali was clearly feeling new sensations and craved more. He cautiously opened his door to ensure no one was around before heading towards his parents' room, a place he was forbidden to enter. The satin against his body and the friction of his stocking-clad legs heightened his excitement. The lace hem of the slip brushed against his legs, enhancing his pleasurable sensations. He carefully opened the door and entered. The first thing he noticed was his reflection in his mother's mirror. He admired how he looked in her lingerie. Rushing to the dresser, Ali opened drawers in search of more of this appealing apparel. He found his mother's lingerie and dipped his arms into it, enjoying the texture. He selected several colorful panties and tucked them into his bra, growing more excited as his chest filled out. As he reached for a soft, lacy nightgown to wear over his current attire, his emotions overwhelmed him. He accidentally soiled the panties and slip he was wearing, with some stains even reaching the suspender belt and stockings. Panicked and unsure of what had happened, Ali hurriedly removed the panties from his bra and shoved them back into the drawer, barely closing it before rushing out of the room. Back in his own room, he removed his mother's items and, in his haste, snagged one of the stockings, causing a run. Unaware of the damage, he changed back into his clothes and tried to refold the lingerie before putting it in the laundry basket. Once he thought everything was in order, he returned to his room and attempted to read a familiar book. When his parents returned home, they noticed that things were out of place. His mother saw that her red lingerie in the laundry basket was disarrayed and noticed stains on the items, including a stocking with a run. The father observed that their bedroom door was ajar, which was unusual. Upon entering the room, the mother found the lingerie drawer partially open with a pair of panties sticking out. After a brief discussion, the parents decided to speak to Ali about their concerns after dinner. At dinner, Ali remained quiet, avoiding eye contact with his parents. Their behavior and conversation suggested they suspected something was amiss. Once finished, Ali asked to be excused, hoping to avoid their questions. His mother insisted he stay seated while she cleared the table. Ali swallowed nervously, fearing the worst but remained silent. Once the dinner dishes were cleared away, both parents sat and looked at him. Finally, Ali's father spoke and asked if he had been into their room. Ali was caught, for he could not lie to his parents. When he tried to, he would stutter and his parents knew he was not telling the truth. He lowered his gaze and stammered out that he had not been in there. Then his mother asked two questions in rapid succession. Had he gotten into her lingerie drawer and had he worn some of her nice satin lingerie? At this, Ali stammered out his denials. His parents knew that Ali was not being truthful. His mother went and retrieved the items Ali had worn. She placed them on the table and pointed out the telltale stains on the slip and panties and the spots on the suspender belt and stockings. She also pointed out the runner in the stocking, one that she would not allow to happen. Lastly, she said that her lingerie drawer had been left partially open and her lingerie had been left in disarray. Ali knew he was caught and softly admitted that he had worn her things and been into their room. Although his parents were disappointed in his lying, they were even more disappointed in his wearing of the lingerie and the entering of their room. The father decided that Ali would spend the rest of the evening dressed in this forbidden attire that he had chosen. Also, both mother and father would refer him to as Alina while he was dressed. He was to help his mother do her tasks around the home while the father went to confer with the community leaders over a proper punishment for Ali. While his father believed in discipline, he did not believe that physical punishment served any useful purpose and thus should be avoided. The mother led Alina back to the parents' room to change while the father left for the community hall where he would meet with some of the elders and leaders of their community. Alina felt ashamed, as he had to completely undress in front of his mother. She was adamant and stood there waiting for Alina to finish undressing. She then handed him the red satin bra, which had caused such feelings of delight only a few hours before. He slipped it over his arms and then struggled to fasten the back as he had done earlier. His mother took pity on him and moved behind Alina and quickly fastened the bra. Next came the red suspender belt with its telltale spots. Alina kept her eyes on the floor as she quickly fastened the belt around her waist. Her mother then handed her the panties with the stain in front. Alina was ashamed to put them on now, but had no choice as her mother stood patiently waiting for the garment to be put on. Once she was dressed in these items, her mother scolded her for ruining one of the stockings. For tonight, Alina would wear the stockings with the runner. She sat on the edge of the bed and put them on, making sure that the tops were securely attached to the suspenders. The mother had Alina stand and turn around. She nodded briefly, and in the first show of kindness since the ordeal began, said that Alina would have made a pretty girl. This caused confusing emotions in Alina. On the one hand, she was pleased that her mother thought she was pretty. Yet, on the other was the realization that boys aren't usually considered to be pretty. As she pondered this in her mind, her mother had left the room briefly, returning with what turned out to be realistic chest forms, which she placed in the cups of Alina's bra. Before Alina could ask where they had come from, Mother spoke up and said that, when she was a teenager, she had needed some help before Mother Nature had properly filled her out. Alina could see her reflection in the mirror and blushed at what she saw. The reflected image was that of a pretty young girl in her lingerie. The moment of reverie was quickly interrupted when Alina was handed the red satin slip. Earlier, she had delighted in feeling the lace along the hem and bodice. Now, she handled the garment as if in a trance. Slipping it over her body and smoothing it out, she caught her mother's approving nod. Her mother then inquired whether Alina preferred one of her long, shapeless dresses or something more feminine. In a gentle voice, Alina expressed a desire for a more feminine option. Her mother retrieved a beautiful red and black satin print dress from the closet, which was fitted at the waist and flowed into a fuller skirt that fell to the knees. Alina was instructed to sit at her mother's vanity for the next stage of the process. First, a pair of black women's flats was slipped onto her feet. Then, adhering to community guidelines, light makeup was applied, some blush and a touch of lipstick. As the creamy lipstick coated her lips, Alina's initial dread and anxiety faded, replaced by a sense of pleasure similar to the one she experienced when first donning the bra and panties. Finally, her mother wrapped one of her large satin headscarves around Alina's hair. Next, Alina was guided to the kitchen where a frilly pink apron, one she had never seen before, was fastened around her waist. She assisted her mother with washing dishes and tidying up. Just as they were finishing, her father arrived home from a meeting with the elders. He informed them that the Council of Elders would convene the following night to determine Alina's punishment. In their community, the Council of Elders handled law enforcement and judicial matters, mostly addressing minor issues. Major incidents involved local authorities. Generally, the community managed its own affairs well, using non-physical punishments for offenses. One community rule required women to wear a black cloth burqa to community meetings and religious services. This shapeless garment covered everything except the hands and eyes. For formal occasions and services, the burqa was replaced with one made of black satin. While women were expected to wear this attire at all times, the Council of Elders permitted exceptions for women who worked outside the home. They could instead wear a long, shapeless, ankle-length dress in a muted color, typically black, and a large headscarf, leaving only their hands and face visible. These women were also allowed to wear minimal makeup. The council's punishments were distinctive but effective in preventing repeat offenses. For a man found guilty of mistreating women and girls, the sentence was to wear a yellow satin burqa for a month. Yellow satin symbolized cowardice in the community, implying that only a coward would mistreat women. Additionally, the offender had to wear women's lingerie underneath as a sign of remorse. A matronly woman was assigned to ensure the punishment was enforced. For adultery, the punishment was a red satin burqa. Much like the scarlet letter of past societies, the red burqa publicly identified the offender as someone who had betrayed their partner. This applied to both men and women. Those sentenced had to wear this red burqa for a specified period to mark their guilt, and men had to wear feminine attire beneath it. In cases where a woman was accused and proven to be a prostitute, she was required to wear a purple burqa. Some women in the community seemed to take pleasure in wearing the purple satin burqas, as though they wanted their offenses to be publicly known, especially to certain men who might have believed they could evade accusations of adultery while indulging in illicit activities. Alina had been aware of these orders of the council and had been at community meetings and services when people wearing the different color burqas were in attendance. She had also heard a vague comment about what the council sentence was for boys who dressed in their girlfriends' or mothers' things or who had tried to seduce another boy of the community. However, up until this time, she had never paid any attention to it. Now, her father announced that Alina would be going before the council tomorrow night. The mother nodded in understanding of the preparation she would have to do to get Alina ready for her appearance before the council. That night, Alina prepared for bed under the watchful supervision of her mother. She had to take off the dress and hang it neatly in her closet. Realizing that there was a lovely dress hanging in her closet was almost too much for Alina to accept. She slowly and, somewhat sadly, removed all of her lingerie and placed them on her chair. Her mother said that they would have to be hand-washed first thing in the morning. Alina then put on the clean bra and panties in black satin that her mother had given her. This was followed by a black satin nightie. Alina almost blushed in front of her mother when she realized how lacy and form-fitting the garment was. After checking to make sure that the headscarf was securely in place, the mother asked Alina if she had learned her lesson. Almost timidly, Alina replied that she was actually enjoying wearing her mother's things and that her only regret was in causing them so much trouble. Her mother gently stroked Alina's hair through the softness of the scarf and admitted that she had wanted a daughter. Perhaps this would help her achieve her wish, at least in part. The next morning Alina awoke in her nightgown and started to feel a pleasant sensation again in her inner thigh. Before she could touch herself, her mother entered the room. Realizing what could have happened, the mother told Alina to wait until she returned. In a few seconds, she returned with a box of maxi pads. She had Alina place one in her panties and smiled and said that it would help prevent those stains from getting on her clothes. Alina had to gather her lingerie from yesterday and take it into the bathroom to be washed in the sink. Her mother gave her instructions on how warm the water should be, how much soap to use, how to get the stains out that she had left while wearing the lingerie, and how to rinse out the lingerie and hang it up over the towel bar in the tub so that it would dry. Alina did this task in her nightgown and scarf. Even with the maxi pad in place, Alina still found herself getting excited again. After hand-washing the dirty lingerie, Alina was told to get dressed, keeping on her bra and panties and putting on a clean suspender belt, stockings, and slip. All of Alina's lingerie matched. She savored the touches of the satin and lace against her skin and felt the awkwardness of the maxi pad between her legs. Again she wore the same dress as the night before. Her mother redid her makeup and retied her scarf. She was already wearing her usual attire of the long shapeless black dress and headscarf. When Alina asked her mother what the plan was for the day, she was informed that they needed to purchase appropriate clothing for her to wear that evening. They walked 3 blocks to a local shop specializing in women's apparel and lingerie. News of someone in pink satin walking through the community would spread quickly. The shopkeeper greeted them warmly and took note of Alina. She inquired about their visit, and Alina's mother briefly explained that her son had worn her clothing. The saleslady listened attentively, nodded in understanding, and made a brief mention of the pink satin burqa. First, Alina was taken to one of the fitting room where she removed her dress and stood patiently while the saleslady measured her over various parts of her body. She then waited as the saleslady and her mother quickly gathered various items of apparel. When they returned to the fitting room, Alina was ordered to completely undress. She began to voice a protest but quickly became silent under a stern look from her mother. Soon she was unclothed before her mother and this stranger. The saleslady again nodded wisely as she saw the maxi pad stuck inside of Alina's panties and the realistic chest forms filling her bra. Alina felt like a big doll as her mother and the saleslady began to dress her for her appearance before the council. First, a pink satin bra was placed around Alina's chest and hooked. After inserting the chest forms, the bra was adjusted for the best possible fit. Next,
The pink satin suspender belt was placed around Alina's waist and fastened. When she sat down to have her stockings put on, the saleslady suggested a few coats of pink nail polish on the toenails to match the rest of the attire. Alina's mother quickly agreed and watched as the saleslady deftly applied 2 coats of pink polish to the toenails. Once the nails were dry, she slipped the stockings up Alina's legs and had her stand while the tops were secured to the garters. Alina's mother held out the pink satin panties for her to step into. In viewing this satin and lace confection, the only word that came to Alina's mind to describe the panties was luscious. Of course, the now obligatory maxi pad was placed inside of Alina's panties. As she stepped into them, Alina felt a shiver of excitement. If Alina found the panties delightful, she struggled to find a word for the knee-length pink satin full slip. Once it was in place, the saleslady adjusted the straps meticulously to ensure the slip hung correctly and looked elegant. Alina reveled in the pampering, admiring the lace trimming at the hem and bodice. She began to understand why a woman might spend her last dollar on exquisite, frothy lingerie. The saleslady then had Alina try on pink 2-inch heels, assisting her as she learned to walk in them. Soon, Alina moved gracefully, her slip swaying around her knees with every step. The saleslady guided Alina to a mirror so she could take in her transformed appearance. Seeing her reflection in the new pink satin lingerie, heels, and her mother's headscarf was thrilling for Alina, despite her concerns about the Council of Elders meeting that evening. As she admired her feminine look, Alina noticed the saleslady holding a dress what she assumed was her own. The saleslady helped Alina into the pink satin dress, while her mother stood nearby, nodding in approval. Though most families in the community would view a son dressed in pink satin as disgraceful, the mother felt a sense of pride in how attractive her new daughter appeared. Alina turned slowly so her mother could see how well the dress fit. The fitted bodice highlighted her enhanced chest, and the skirt fell loosely just above her knees. Her mother was pleased with Alina's appearance but tried to conceal her approval to prevent Alina from thinking she endorsed this style of dressing. As Alina prepared for the next step, she was reminded to sweep the skirt of her dress gracefully around her as she took a seat. The saleslady removed the headscarf and handed it to the mother before applying foundation and powder to Alina's face. She added a touch of pink blush to her cheeks and coated her lips with pink lipstick. Large, dangling gold hoop clip-on earrings were then placed on Alina's ears. Though the earrings were initially surprising and slightly uncomfortable, Alina quickly adjusted. Finally, a long pink satin scarf, similar to her mother's, was tied over Alina's hair. The saleslady smiled and assured Alina's mother that everything was in order for Alina's appearance before the Council of Elders. She confirmed that the pink satin burqa would be prepared and ready once the council had made their decision. Additionally, she mentioned that all of Alina's other clothes would be delivered to their home after the council's ruling, waiting for her punishment. The mother thanked her, and they left the shop. Despite having a few hours before Alina's scheduled appearance, her mother insisted they walk over to the council hall early. This exposure might intimidate Alina and deter her from repeating her transgressions. However, Alina seemed to enjoy her time out in the community, dressed in soft, silky pink satin. Her mother noticed this and felt a glimmer of satisfaction, thinking she might finally have the daughter she had always wished for. As they walked to the hall on a bright Saturday afternoon, many community members saw Alina in her pink satin attire, causing a stir. People recognized her and made plans to attend the evening's proceedings to witness what would unfold. Upon arriving at the hall, Alina followed her mother inside and took her place on the bench reserved for those appearing before the council. Her mother sat beside her, offering a reassuring smile. Soon, the community began to gather. Men were dressed in their usual attire, while the women wore their black cloth burqas. Alina's mother, who was standing with her son, was not in a burqa. Among the crowd were 2 women proudly wearing purple satin burqas, a pair wearing red satin burqas for adultery, and a man in a yellow satin burqa for abuse. Just before the council session began, another person in pink satin joined the bench with their mother. Alina was surprised to see someone else dressed similarly, thinking she was the only one in this predicament. This other person, named Jasmine, wore a tighter skirt and more makeup than Alina. When the session started, both Alina and Jasmine stood before the council as the charges were read. Alina recognized Jasmine as a longtime classmate once she closely observed the boy's made-up face. The fathers of both boys presented the facts of the cases, and since traditionally only women testified in cases of adultery, this process was brief. The council, having heard all the necessary details, reached a decision on each boy without taking time to deliberate further. As the chief elder stood to announce the punishment, Alina was taken aback when Jasmine reached out and took her hand. The touch sent a strange but pleasant sensation through her. Here she was, standing before the chief elder, dressed as a girl and holding hands with another similarly dressed boy. The chief elder gave a slight frown at the display but said nothing. The verdict was clear: both boys were to remain dressed as girls for 1 month. They would also be required to wear pink satin burqas at all times, except while sleeping. Their mothers were tasked with ensuring the punishment was fully carried out, with the hope that this would correct the deviant behavior that brought them before the council. As the chief elder concluded, both mothers received wrapped packages from women in the hall. Unwrapping them revealed identical pink satin burqas. Alina's mother proceeded to put the pink burqa on her, adjusting it so only her eyes and hands were visible, while Jasmine's mother did the same for her. Alina stood as her mother adjusted the burqa, casting a brief glance at Jasmine, who was similarly covered. Although it was hard to tell, Alina sensed that Jasmine might be enjoying the pink satin as much as she was. As she prepared to leave the community hall, fully covered in her satin burqa and walking behind her parents, Alina wondered how many times she could be punished in this way. If some women could be punished repeatedly with purple satin burqas for their transgressions, why couldn't she be similarly punished as a sissy with the pink satin burqa? Alina realized that she enjoyed being in her new role, embracing her identity as Alina.